All right. So, really working on giving distilled advice on how someone who's graduating from high school would need in order to find a job. Essentially, a big part of the goal is to keep in mind of a general population that may be struggling with the ability to get work. And my job is to reflect on what are some of the first steps, how someone can get experience, how someone can then apply themselves to positions, use their network to meet new people, and to gain new insight into emerging jobs or even new job markets, and how they can explore the next ideas. One of the biggest crux of going to high school is that, one, you may not know what it is that you like to do or what you want to do. And if you do have a better idea of what you are looking for, this may be a big challenge as guidance counselors try their best to silo you into a career that may be one of many options. So, my first take would be, if you're unsure of what you want to do, is to simply explore the things that you're interested in. This could be as simple as, say you like to go on walks at the park and you enjoy looking at the flowers that are at the park. You find it interesting that there are many different colors, that some of them grow in bunches, others grow by themselves, and you start to investigate your own curiosity behind why it is that these flowers become this way. You start to learn more about what's the difference between the pinks and the white ones. You start to dive deeper into how they progenate or how they become new flowers. You learn the differences between flowers and plants. And now you become curious in how you want to arrange them. Simply by following that curiosity and diving deeper into the things that you like to do, you can get a better idea of the areas that you're interested in. Because say you're interested in flowers, maybe you want to be someone who makes bouquets. But then you have to ask yourself these questions of, how much autonomy do you want to have? How social do you want to be? What type of people do you want to be working with? Something to keep in mind is that those phrases, those questions can give you a better idea of where to go next. For example, say you are very social and you enjoy being a part of a group, maybe even a committee. This could be very helpful if you want to discover the types of careers you want to be in, because then that opens doors into places like making bouquets for weddings. That involves interacting with many different people, whether it's the bride and the groom, their family members, getting the arrangement set up, planning, collaborating with the planner, or say you want to keep things more low-key. You just want to focus on putting your head down and making the bouquets, maybe a flower shop where you're selling flowers to people who are just window shopping. All you want to do is just do the checkout. That's fine. Being able to understand that idea of self-determination, focusing on the things that you want to do, will help you identify what it is that you'd like to pursue as a career. Another example could be someone who just wants to get a job that pays financially. We go back to some of the core ideas of self-determination, which include autonomy, competency, and relatedness. And we just touched on relatedness, which is about centers of connection, trust, and relationships. That's like the type of people you want to work with, how social you want to be, how much interaction you want to have. Then we can talk about autonomy. Maybe you just want to be working by yourself, curating the bouquets, or maybe you want to be part of a team that wants to problem solve and respects your ideas. Maybe you want to be an independent business owner Maybe you want to just make your own little flower stand, your own little shop. Or maybe you like to work for a big company. You know, focusing on autonomy invites reflection on who you are, what makes you happy, and what would you like to do, versus focus on competency. Maybe you're not great at making flowers, but you love the opportunity to work with someone who can teach you. Maybe you're really good at problem solving and you really enjoy that. You know, once you figure out the type of person you are, maybe you're someone who likes to learn on his own or their own. Identifying and focusing on autonomy, your competency, and relatedness. These are all parts of incorporating self-determination theory into your own experience and taking ownership of your new role. A couple questions you may want to ask yourself is, what's one thing you've done your way and felt proud of that can help you identify autonomy? Building confidence in your own ability to make your own decisions. Asking yourself, when do you feel alive? When do you feel like yourself and not just trying to make it to the next day? Try and ask yourself, who listens to you while making you feel like you're your own individual person. Asking yourself if you've ever been taught by someone or helping someone else in a way that matters. Asking yourself what kind of jobs or tasks would let you be in control of how things are done in the way that you want to be doing them. You can ask yourself whether you feel more calm and confident in quiet spaces with headphones locked in, or maybe you like to hang around people. Maybe you like to actually build something, create something tangible someone else can feel. Or maybe you really enjoy long hours in front of the computer. You have to find something that makes you feel like you're contributing to something that challenges you and gets you excited. And it doesn't have to be perfect. A lot of life is trial and error. A lot of times you'll learn that some things are just meant to provide for your needs. And that's okay. Whether it's just like paying grocery bills and rent, or pursuing a hobby that you really enjoy. One way to figure out next steps is just focus on deciding on the thing that you like to prioritize on. So once you have a job in mind, the next step is getting experience. And this can technically be the most challenging part. However, it's hard to say no to free work. You can volunteer for an organization that is giving you the experience that you need to apply for a job that affords funding. Someone who wants to be a doctor can volunteer at a hospital for free. It gives you exposure to the teams, whether it's the front desk people, nurses, doctors, PAs, getting to meet other volunteers, event organizers, people within the hospital who can give you guidance on the regulations and the rules, an understanding of what the policies are at or what they're like. This can give you crucial experience for when you're trying to apply into a new job. Not only that, but those experiences can give you access to letters of recommendation, referrals even. And this is all done by using your time. From my own personal experience, I made a pivot from wanting to pursue a profession in healthcare to wanting to work on web design technology. I wanted to work in the tech industry. And for the longest time, I didn't have experience. At least professionally, I didn't have experience. But I did have, in my free time, experience making websites. So I decided that while I was applying, I would pursue freelance. So this is a way that I was able to use my experience or my desire to learn, or using the limited experience that I had to sell myself to small businesses in my area. And that not only taught me how to build websites, but it also taught me how to deal with customer service, appeal to clients, sell to prospective clients, learn how to manage my time, as well as meet deadlines. These are all valuable skills that you can then add onto your resume if you don't have any experience. So you can either volunteer, get experience, or sell yourself if you already have some experiences that other people will find valuable. When I was pivoting from healthcare to technology, a lot of what I learned was also available online for free. You don't necessarily have to pay for a course to learn how to build a website or learn how to build a beautiful bouquet. A lot of times there's a lot of information that's out there that's available for free through the generous contributions of other people, and you can learn from them. And from there, you can build your foundations, understanding standard operating procedures or good best practices that you can then bring to either clientele, volunteer organization, or items you can add to your resume as you look for a job. So far, we've talked about how to look for something that you're interested in. We just finished talking about how to find something that will allow you to get that experience that you need if you don't have experience. Now I'll talk about paid options. So a lot of what you can find can be found on the internet. There's additional resources. You can either use Google. There's also ChatGPT. YouTube is an excellent resource. A lot of people are learning things on TikTok for really bite-sized, punchy information on demand. And you can practice on-demand learning, which essentially just means you're finding the answers to your questions online. This could be on forums. You can also type in, how do I do X, Y, and Z, and then add Reddit to your search, and that will allow you to get real answers from real people. You can also ask resources in your community. Maybe people can teach you how to do something. I was trying to get into construction, and fortunately my uncle already had a job, and he was able to show me how to create pavers in a home, and that allowed me to get that experience through him, but just by asking around. I had bought a camera for free, or I had bought a camera and offered to take photos for free, and that allowed me to get experience, posing people, feeling comfortable around taking photos in public, and generating income that way. There are also paid resources. Well, actually, the photos, I helped volunteer with my friend to take photos, and he showed me how to take photos. He was really well known in the community, and he gave me a 1-hour crash course on how he would edit photos and his whole process, and that allowed me to basically get a good head start onto my own photography style. There's also paid courses that are available either on Skillshare, where people sell their skills and their abilities to make things. Skillshare. There's courses on Coursera. Yeah, there's lots of opportunities to learn things. There's also free certificates. There's Meta has their own marketing and ad certificate. Google has their own certificates for Google Ads and marketing and digital design. If a white collar office job isn't what you're looking for, you can get involved in trade schools. Whether you're learning with someone in your community, whether it's maybe a family member like your uncle or your aunt, or maybe it's someone that you know, like a friend who's in the industry, or even someone who could just teach you essentials. You can learn by experience, or you can enter a trade school and learn how to do things like working with electricians, plumbers. You can be a journeyman. Same thing can apply for maybe you want to get your CDL driving license. You basically become a truck driver, and licensed drivers can make decent money. I literally just talked to a CDL driver on the bus, and he told me he made $5,000 every 2 weeks to drive a CDL truck, a CDL licensed truck across the country. So there's lots of different opportunities. It's simply focusing on the ones that you want to do and focusing on those experiences. So we just talked about how to get experience, the different options you can take, whether it's trade schools or online schools. We didn't really talk about going to college. That's also not another opportunity if you're looking for a profession that requires a professional degree, such as being an accountant or a lawyer or a doctor. Like nursing. So all those experiences can give you access to resources and people that can know more about those industries and get you a professional career in those fields. For at-risk youth, there's a lot of data that shows that pursuing a college degree is one of the best returns on investments. There's often a lot of resources, scholarships, organizations that are focused on pushing at-risk, whether it's foster care youth, even students who wanted to pursue school and then dropped out. There are resources for those students, as many states, local governments, federal governments try to create programs that assist these people who often are considered at risk or just need assistance. There's a much higher return on investment. The reason for that is that there's a bigger jump from being low income to getting to the middle class or even upper middle class or higher classes that is seen in these types of demographics. And if I use myself for an example, a first gen college student, parents of immigrants, and at 28, I am making more money than either my mom or my dad. And they're both in their 50s or close to their 50s. And that's just where I'm at career-wise today. My income is projected to grow further as I continue on my career path, as I continue to gain more experience in the industries that I'm in. And that's very helpful. That's very helpful for me. Like, from going from EBT, food stamps, to buying groceries at like Whole Foods or Trader Joe's, being able to consider buying things like grass-fed meats, fresh vegetables. And that's not to say I don't enjoy like the pudding at the Dollar Tree, because that's still gas. It's nice knowing that I don't have to worry about my next paycheck, that I don't have to work every day to make ends meet, that I'm not working paycheck to paycheck and I'm able to afford my car payment. I'm able to afford 2 vacations a year. I'm able to afford, flexibility, like paid time off, which is not always possible or offered. So, the caveat would be that you have to solve hard problems and get into industries that are competitive. But once you're in them, it's the benefits are helpful. So versus like trade school, like there isn't as much debt if you go into trade school, but the wear and tear on the body can become a very hard factor to deal with. But a lot of trade programs offer mentorship and apprenticeship that can give you guidance on income potentials and financing in careers that are simply just manual labor and work. Not to say that you don't have to still understand concepts like electricity or plumbing, etc. But the hardest hurdle and challenge is physically getting the work done and completed. That, for example, an electrician working on a home would have to go into the attic of the home, and that's often not air conditioned, and it's very hot and it's very warm. You have to work in that setting, crouched down in a tight corner until that work is complete. You gotta make sure all the connections in the boxes are connected. A lot of work. It's really hard work. Versus like white collar jobs, you're kind of just sitting in front of a computer making analytical decisions that require an intense amount of focus and understanding of the problems at hand. So we've talked about how to look for something that you want to do, how to get experience in the field that you want to be in. We explored options such as trade school, higher education, and touched on freelance or entrepreneurship. So now we got to touch on applying to jobs. Hopefully now that you have the experience and the credentials, you can now build your resume, which essentially is a culmination of your experience and accomplishments that is then read by a recruiter or an employer to hopefully get you into the interview. The main focus is when applying with your resume, it's important to keep a copy of a master resume that is a list of all the accomplishments that you've done, and then to create curated resumes for the jobs that you're hoping to apply to. My best tip is to always look for referrals. If someone is hiring, it's best to find someone who can give you a referral into those companies, because people want to work with people they trust. They want to work with people they vibe with. And it's hard to, quote unquote, vet someone for their work compatibility if they don't know the person. It's easy to make things up on the interview, which we'll talk about. So referrals are the best way to get your resume through the door into a live person who will actively read it and decide if they can move on to the next steps. On the resume, it's important to highlight details, percentages, numbers, concrete answers. Soft skills are important, but if you're talking about, I have great communication skills, examples such as I was able to organize a group of 100 people for a wedding that I planned during the busy wedding season, that both the bride and groom were 100% satisfied with the results. Or I was able to de-escalate, on average, 5 customer inquiries per day, every week, at the company I worked for over 3 years. Those are very specific responses that are catered towards the job description of the job you're hoping to apply for. At least that would be the goal. So hopefully you have your resume set, you have some referrals. If you don't have referrals, you can always mass apply. But always try your best to find someone who can refer you. The reason for that is people would want to refer you and vet you, and there actually is an incentive for them to recommend you to a company because for recruiters, they get a little bonus, a little commission, because essentially they're saving the company time and finding a qualified candidate. So if you get hired, they get paid. You shouldn't feel bad asking for favors or referrals to companies. There's an incentive for them to bring you on. Same goes for your friends. They likely get a referral bonus. Even when I worked at In-N-Out, my brother got a $50 referral bonus for referring me and getting hired at the In-N-Out that he worked at. Because people want to hire quality candidates. They want people who aren't going to show up late to the job, who are going to quit 2 weeks in. So people essentially will be sticking their neck out for you if you're hired. But there is a bonus for them. There is an incentive for them to help you, not just from a moral standpoint, but from a financial standpoint. Now, the last step, the interview process. This takes a lot of practice. And my biggest tip is to find someone who can basically ask you questions. Who can basically ask you interview questions that would help you, get through that interview process. You have to do mock interviews. You will get nervous. You will stumble on your words, and it will be hard to answer the questions. So it's highly recommended that you focus on getting practice, getting your reps in. You can even practice in front of a camera. Everyone has a phone these days. Practice in front of a camera and ask yourself these questions. Have someone ask you those questions. You can even be like at a library, like a friend, a neighbor, someone you trust, the librarian, your teacher, anyone who is willing to help you get through that process. Anyone who's able to get you through that process. It takes practice. If you're at a college or university, they likely have a mock interview workshop that you can sign up for. Sometimes it's paid, but the ones at my school are free. You get one free one every quarter or every semester, depending on where you're at. So that's really helpful. So if you're not sure what kind of questions to ask, you can Google them. You can even ask ChatGPT to come up with questions for you. So say, for example, you're an 18-year-old freshly graduated high school student, or maybe you're a high school dropout. I don't know your conditions, but you could put that in. Maybe add that you have tons of experience working in the industry that you want to apply for. So let's say you have a ton of So let's say like you're a track athlete, you're a star, and you have tons of experience training not just your team, but also people from other schools. Maybe you have your own YouTube channel where you made videos of how to warm up, how to get started, and you're trying to apply to work at a gym. These are things that you can add into a ChatGPT response or something like Gemini, any tool that's available for you, and then prompt it to formulate questions that an interviewer at that specific gym will want to ask you. So if you do things like that, it'll allow you to practice with questions that are best suited for someone like you to talk to the best of your ability. You can even use current GPTs. Some of them may cost money, but some of them are also you can use for free for a specific, maybe a limited amount of time. I've seen one person create a GPT for interviews on how to get a sales position at a Fortune 500 company, and essentially ChatGPT was asking it questions, and the person would respond with the responses, and it would keep a transcript of the conversation that was going on, and then afterwards would give feedback. So based on the conversation at hand. So that would be a great way to practice those interview questions if you don't have access to any resources such as real people. But hopefully someone like your friend or a family member will be able to help you practice for your next interview. Of course, if you want to dress professionally, I try my best not to overthink it. If it's a Zoom call, I always like to wear a tie. Even if it seems less formal, it's just a great presentation is important. You know, people only have a few minutes to get to know you. It's best to make sure you put your best foot forward. You know, comb your hair, do your makeup. For in-person job interviews, hopefully you'll have access to a suit or a dress or your Sunday best. If you don't have access to these things, there are actually centers. Universities have centers for people to borrow or rent suits on the cheap or dresses on the cheap. If you can't afford something, maybe you can ask someone to borrow a suit or dress or something that perhaps could fit you. Another idea is to go thrifting. I actually bought a suit cover and some pants for $25, which is a steal. Yeah, it fit me a little big, but you know, with some nice dress shoes, anything's possible. You know, you can get used shoes on the internet. You can borrow shoes from my friend. And there's always options. There's a will, there's a way. So now that you practiced your interview questions, the way you speak, some general tips is to avoid saying like or It just doesn't sound as great when you're doing your interview. You know, keep a strong posture while you're interviewing, and don't forget to smile. It's really important to remind yourself that's okay. And if you mess up, it's all right. You can ask for time to think about a question. You know, I've done that in all my interviews. I've always asked for more time whenever I get a really challenging question that really makes me think. And then once you're done with the interview, don't be afraid to follow up, either by messaging them, saying thank you for the opportunity, and hopefully you'll get the job.